How long is forever? It was night. He looked up at the hazy sky, the industrial smells of welding swarf and diesel omnipresent. The moon peered through the occasional break in the toxic cloud cover. The vast, dirty city had become contaminated. The concentration of impurities in the atmosphere was now reaching unmanageable levels, and the city was dying. The streets were becoming emptier all the time. Harsh, hot wind and acid rain blew through the broken glass in the abandoned skyscrapers, and some lights remained on despite, with a depressing, eerie yellow glow. Nearly everyone had left, and large areas were now being retaken by vines and damp organic overgrowth. He remembered a time before all of this, when maintaining environmental equilibrium was the way it was, and the people seemed to have coasted for a great age in a man-made utopia. Tonight, he would leave. After following the same dreams that many had in the metropolis, to be rich in trading credits and be seen as one of influence, he knew in his heart that all he could do is leave and try to find a new meaning for his life. His own personal world had been collapsing, it seemed, almost in sympathy with a world that could no longer sustain the fight against nature. Looking back, it was impossible to not feel both sadness and anger. The great city, his hopes and dreams, the slow decay that had set in as it all became hopeless. Indeed, there was no saving the great aerial ocean. Only time could make it right. But many lifetimes would need to pass, and reaching the dark outskirts of the metropolis, he looked back. Mother, forgive us, he thought, seeing the jagged skyline just illuminated through the haze. Then he turned and ran towards the dark coastline. It would be a long night, and he was now completely alone. This had to be the way forward, finding the northern settlement where the water was still drinkable and the ground was such that grass could grow. His heart pumped at a steady pace. I will find a way, he thought. Life must find a way, and time will go on with or without us. The inner conflict of the people had always been their undoing. In a haze of distraction and being unconsciously steered by their vestigial compulsions, they lost their way. The traveller, as he now was, knew deep down it had all been wrong. Something inside had informed him. The day was short, and running with determination along the coastline, the smell of the sea seemed a welcome change. The block is where it's always been, he thought. We could be our own masters and start again if we're willing to wake up. The later afternoon was turning to evening. The reality of his situation was setting in. He was one man. How could he hope to change the world? A spectrum of thoughts ran through his head as he now walked slowly along the beach. The sun's radiation had been replaced by the pale moon, now visible being far enough from the polluted southern settlement. Still determined to continue, but almost entering a trance from walking, he thought of the woman he'd loved but left behind. The pain of losing her wasn't enough to stop him, but he knew if he was quiet in mind that there would always be a sadness he would carry. She was older than him and would forever carry her own regrets and sadness, though not enough to change. Reflecting on the hopelessness, he walked on, knowing it was the only way. Finally, he sat on the beach, looking out to where the moon now painted a strip of the black water, broken and shimmering. Life, he thought, so short. Here one day, then gone forever. In the quiet, warm night, looking to the watery horizon, he thought about the many that had been lost in the great Atlanticos sea disaster. They were trying to find a new life, new meaning, much like he was now, but most of them died, swallowed by the dark water. Their hopes, dreams, desperation for life, and happiness was there one moment and then gone, erased from existence. In old times, we thought they went somewhere else, but those ideas had long been replaced with understanding that beautiful, meaningful things can be gone forever, and that our fleeting moments can only be seen as more important for their momentary uniqueness and scarcity. The traveller lay back, looking up at the sky. His eyes wanted to close. He looked at the stars so very far away and wondered if somewhere there was a perfect planet with no people, just pure, volatile but beautiful nature. Endless sunsets on beaches without life and without anybody to see them. Suddenly lights flying past at a speed unimaginable through space and time to where meaning ceased to matter. At the threshold of reality, consciously experiencing the creation of the boundaries of the universe, a perspective inconceivable in the conscious mind, falling faster and faster towards the particle horizon, but without form. How can it be? And then silence. An expanse greater than the mind can perceive. In the presence of the great boundless all, floating, he realized none of it mattered, did it? Outside of time, beyond space, the traveller, though still in thought, was now, it seemed, only thought. How can it be? What is reality? I know it's all okay. I'm everywhere and nowhere, but how do I return to... Will I remember? The awe and inconceivability of the situation climaxed with what was like euphoria, dramatic and all-encompassing. Everything was now in perspective, but if only I had the chance to, he thought. And now it was like he was flying over his old city, but it was far into the future. It was all ruins and there was nobody. It was like he was dreaming, but it seemed so real. I can't be in the future, he thought. And what's happened to me? The vision faded and he could feel his body curled in a ball. He was in some kind of structure, a glass egg. Through the glass he could see that it was on the ground in the middle of the future vision of the metropolis he'd seen from the aerial view. Then the egg cracked open in a deliberate symmetrical formation and the cold air of the outside rushed to chill his skin. His form, though, white, almost transparent, and he was naked. All that was left was the essence of man. Somehow he knew the only thing he could do, and what he had to do was to step back into the world. Now, as if returning from a dream, he woke. Taking a slow, deep and slightly unsure breath, it was day. His clothes were stiff as if they'd been soaked in salt. As he slowly opened his eyes, the bright midday sun's pure light was coming down. He was lying down and slowly sat up and looked around. The sea was gone. He was in the middle of a dry, cracked seabed which had become a desert. How much time had passed, was his first thought. Everything was so quiet and calm, and slowly he felt the building presence of a being he knew could only be the elemental carer of his world. She materialized in a brilliant white form above him. And so now, Mother, you were there for me, and now I'll be there by your side. The mother spoke. In the sun now, but it's too late. Failing now. Dried out. In the sun. Too late. Her ethereal voice faded away as she seemed to dematerialize back into the ether. He stood up and looked around. In the distance he could see green growth and water. And was that signs of the northern settlement? The traveller set off at a smart pace. In the world, everything had gone wrong, but inside he had changed. The world had been asleep, but he was awake. He knew the pilot light was there in everyone, just waiting. With the motion of walking, it seemed his heart opened more with compassion and hope. Thinking back through the centuries of man, it became clear all the struggling to win the invisible game had been in vain. The fatal side of man is all we've known, he thought. The battle to find something, to progress to somewhere, the compulsion to expand and to increase the expectation of productivity was just a process. There was no destination. It was a process that had led to people's unhappiness, to insane distortion of individuality and the complete disconnection from the environment, unaware that we were like children wandering. With each step, it was like the traveller could feel the essence of the world, the great mother beneath him as he walked. The separation between himself and the earth seemed to blur. He could feel his purpose, in sync with what was honest, true and strong, without any effort. It was like being at the end of civilization. But this wouldn't be the end. As he walked, again the sun was starting to set, and he could now clearly see the grey structures with lights glowing in the distance. It was the northern settlement. There's always hope, he thought. We can start again.